This story is about three alien exchange students determined to uncover the truth behind what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. With galactic credits and no self-control, they dive into Earth's wildest city, guided by one very exhausted human. From buffet blunders to skydives and poker diplomacy, chaos unfolds fast. But what they learn in Vegas might not stay there. The moment Jeff opened the group message and saw the words, "We are ready to comprehend what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas," he knew something catastrophic was in motion. Not metaphorically, like genuine interstellar diplomatic incident levels of catastrophic. The trio of exchange students from Veltraxis 9 had spent the last 6 months studying on Earth, absorbing everything from Shakespeare to subreddits. They had questions, so many questions, but none as persistent or suspiciously enthusiastic as their obsession with Las Vegas. Parikh, the most enthusiastic, was shaped vaguely like a rhinoceros in a yoga pose. Yipix looked like a squid's audition for Broadway, graceful, sparkly, and way too expressive. And then there was Dolo, whose biogel eyes recorded everything, a living documentary with the emotional range of a caffeinated intern. Jeff had tried dodging the Vegas question for weeks. He'd explained, with increasing desperation, that what happens in Vegas was more a slogan than a guideline and definitely not a legally binding oath of silence. That just made them more interested. So here they were, Friday afternoon, Las Vegas Boulevard. Dulo blinked twice and pointed a gelatinous limb at the mirage. Observation: heat index currently exceeds the threshold of responsible tourism. Parikh was already halfway inside a vending machine. Jeff wiped sweat off his forehead. "I told you we'd melt. You want it authentic. This is authentic. You want to learn about Vegas? Fine. But you do it the human way. And the human way is..." Yipix leaned in. Jeff pulled out his wallet with dramatic flair and held up a $20 bill. "You lose money slowly until your dignity dissolves." The aliens stared at the bill like it was sacred parchment. Parikh rumbled, "We have galactic credits. I brought 17 units." 17? Jeff coughed. "That's enough to buy Argentina." "Yes," Dolo nodded proudly. "We budgeted for spiritual enlightenment." "God help us," Jeff muttered. "First rule, never use galactic credits directly. You'll break the economy or accidentally buy a senator. We use these," he waved the 20 again. "You convert them into chips. Plastic, symbolic, worthless except in here." He led them into the Bellagio. Immediately, Parikh shouted, "There is an indoor lake. You have water indoors. Indoors. How do your civilizations not drown in luxury?" Jeff muttered an apology to the nearest security guard, grabbed Dolo's squishy hand, and dragged them toward the casino floor. It took 30 minutes to get them registered with guest passes, another 20 to convince Yipix not to tip the roulette wheel to appease the probability spirits. Then they arrived at the slot machines. Parikh stood before a bright red machine called Buffalo Blitz Supreme, with the reverence of a monk in a temple. "This device emits a digital mating call," he said. "What is its reproductive function?" "It eats your money and laughs while doing it," Jeff said, dropping in a bill. The machine whirred, sang, and displayed cartoon buffalo stampeding across a desert. "Behold," Dolo exclaimed, "a visual metaphor of financial obliteration." Jeff lost $5 in 7 seconds. Yipix wiggled in delight. "Is this pleasure or ritual humiliation?" "Both." Hours passed. Somewhere between a confused attempt at blackjack and a painful encounter with a buffet featuring shrimp three-ways, Parikh accidentally tried to purchase the bartender using galactic credits and a firm handshake. Jeff dove in with a distraction involving 2 coasters and a fake magic trick. The aliens were thriving. Jeff was already $35 down, partially deaf from an Elvis impersonator's acoustic guitar solo, and emotionally scarred by Dolo's attempt to social bond with a group of bachelorettes via interpretive dance. At 11 p.m., they stumbled into a cab heading toward Fremont Street. "Why is this zone brighter than your planetary star?" Dolo asked. "Vegas doesn't do subtle." Parikh tapped the cab window. This sector confuses me. Why do so many humans appear intoxicated and jubilant, yet financially diminished? Jeff leaned back, eyes closed. Because it's Vegas. We pretend losing is winning and call it a vacation. Ipix tilted a stalk. This contradicts your psychological models of reward-seeking behavior. Exactly. They reached the old downtown strip. More lights, louder Elvis. A zipliner screamed overhead. Time for cultural immersion, Jeff said. Rule 2, never challenge a man in a feather boa to a dance-off. Yipix raised all 6 eyebrows. Don't ask. By 1 a.m., Perique was serenading a crowd with a misremembered version of Viva Las Vegas, while Dolo tried to reverse engineer a craps table. Yipix had vanished somewhere near a Celine Dion hologram and returned 20 minutes later, wearing sunglasses, a temporary tattoo that said YOLO, and 3 churros. Question, Dolo asked. Is this the spiritual fulfillment we were promised? No, Jeff groaned, rubbing his temples. But this is Vegas. You don't find answers. You lose your wallet, make bad choices, and hope the security footage is too blurry. Perique blinked solemnly. This is magnificent. And that was only day 1. By 8 a.m., Jeff was awake only because the fire alarm in their hotel room went off, triggered, apparently, by Perique's attempt to microwave a churro while it was still wrapped in foil and also tucked inside a paper towel for insulation. The hotel manager knocked twice and then just sighed when she saw who was in the room. I warned you about mixing alien snacks with appliances, she said flatly. Jeff offered a sincere apology, a $20 bill, and a coupon for a free foot massage that Dolo had acquired from a man dressed as a carrot last night. The manager took the foot massage coupon and walked away muttering about intergalactic tourism taxes. Perique was pacing. I have reviewed the itinerary. We were meant to experience all-you-can-eat breakfast buffets by 7 a.m. Jeff blinked blearily. The fire alarm was your fault, Perique. You delayed the pancakes. I was feeding the churro to the microwave gods. Jeff turned to Dolo, who was quietly experimenting with the TV remote like it was a teleportation device. Where's Yipix? Yipix entered the room at that moment, wearing a sequined vest, carrying an inflatable flamingo, and holding a room key card in his beak-like appendage. I have returned with gifts and debts, he said proudly. Jeff sat up straighter. Debts? Apparently the flamingo is considered property of the Tropicana. I told them I believed in communal asset distribution. They disagreed. By 9:15 a.m., they were all seated at the Circus buffet. Jeff pushed eggs around his plate while Yipix interrogated the chef about the existential difference between Belgian waffles and pancakes. These are carb-based. Yet you emotionally rank them? Yes, Jeff said, mouthful of bacon. It's called breakfast bias. Perique took his first bite of sausage and fell completely still. Then, with great reverence, he whispered, This is the most emotionally provocative cylinder I have ever consumed. Jeff blinked. Thanks? Once sufficiently stuffed, the gang set off to find cultural events. Perique's idea of culture involved attending a magic show by a guy named Carl the Enchanter, whose rabbit kept trying to escape mid-trick. Dolo tried to bribe the rabbit for its secrets using a fruit cup. Yipix spent most of the show arguing with the usher over whether levitation violated Newtonian mechanics, or enhanced it. After that, they wandered into an exhibit on Elvis Presley. This man is revered here? Yipix asked, observing a life-size cardboard cutout. Jeff nodded. Yeah, American icon, legendary performer. Dolo, already halfway through the interactive photo booth, emerged dressed in a rhinestone jumpsuit. Observation, his gravitational field of influence is still active. A woman walked by and slipped Dolo her number, mistaking him for a themed performer. Perique recorded the moment. We will show the Chancellor. Earth seduction tactics are more advanced than expected. Please don't, Jeff groaned. Later that day, the aliens found a store called Galactic Games and Gifts. It sold novelty items, alien-themed decor, and a few suspiciously convincing holographic decks. Dolo wandered in and immediately lit up. This is it. This is how we blend. Jeff followed just in time to watch Parikh buy 5 fake ID cards, all with names like Duke Lacerman and Zorp the Invincible. They cannot be used for entry or legal documentation, the cashier warned. We wish to assimilate style, not citizenship, Parikh replied. Back at the hotel, they found themselves invited to a pool party on the roof. Yippee brought sunscreen. He used the entire bottle on his torso, which immediately began foaming in a chemical reaction he called a personal chemistry experiment. The party was a blur. Dolo challenged a lifeguard to a floaty race and won by reconfiguring his body to reduce drag. Jeff had to explain 3 times that no, Parikh was not a mobile water slide despite appearances. Someone handed Jeff a margarita that tasted like betrayal and lime. By 6 p.m., the aliens declared they were ready. For what? Jeff asked. To gamble, Parikh said, with a glint of pride in his eye stalks. With real stakes, with real galactic credits. Jeff's eyes widened. No, I said no galactic credits. We'll end up buying the entire state of Nevada. But they were already halfway to the win. This time, the plan was more coordinated. Dolo had calculated probability curves. Parikh had made flashcards with key phrases like hit me, double down, and how many credits for your planet's mineral rights, which Jeff promptly confiscated. They sat at a blackjack table. A woman named Carol dealt the cards. Eric stared at his hand. I have 19. Is it statistically wise to request more cards? Jeff winced. No, stay. Parikh nodded. I shall stay. But only physically. Spiritually I ascend. Carol looked up slowly. Sir, are you okay? He's foreign, Jeff said quickly. 3 hands later, Yippix won $100. He gasped. The humans gave me wealth for pressing cardboard against a surface? That's gambling, Jeff said. You win some, you lose more. Solo lost 17 hands in a row and began to quietly recite Veltraxian morning poetry. Then Parikh placed a chip on the table. Not a casino chip, a shimmering holographic cube. Jeff grabbed it fast. No! Galactic credits stay in the pocket. The dealer paused. What was that? Jeff coughed. Limited edition mint from Switzerland. They left that table and didn't return. By midnight, they had lost 260 Earth dollars, 7 churros, 2 sets of sunglasses, and the inflatable flamingo, which now resided with a man named Dave, who swore it brought him luck. Parikh stared at the Bellagio fountains. So what happens in Vegas? Stays in Vegas, Jeff muttered. But what if we upload the data stream to the interstellar social hub? Jeff's eyes bulged. Absolutely not. Parikh paused. Then we will store it in our minds. Only? Jeff nodded. That's the spirit. A pause. Yippix whispered, I still have 14 galactic credits left. What is the conversion rate for skydiving lessons? Jeff groaned into his hands. By early Saturday afternoon, Jeff was bargaining with gravity. He lay motionless on the bed in their suite at the Luxor, staring up at the mirrored ceiling and whispering sweet threats at the sunlight bleeding through the curtains. His muscles ached in places he didn't remember having. His ears were still ringing from last night's Elvis karaoke duel, and he could not under any circumstance stomach the thought of another churro. That's when Yippix cannonballed onto the bed, damp, sparkly, and grinning like a cat that had just found a box of firecrackers. Jeff, wake up. No, Jeff mumbled into a pillow. The sun is too loud. New objective, sky-based plummet. Jeff cracked one eye open. Are you trying to say skydiving? Yes, we have scheduled a lesson. Paid in full. Field what? Yippix reached into his belt pouch and pulled out a stubby hologram receipt. I bartered a temporary holographic Elvis appearance and an intergalactic trivia session about Venusian flatworms. Jeff sat up with a groan. That's not a fair trade. That's blackmail by trivia. It was a promotional rate, Yippix said brightly. 2 hours later, They stood at a small skydiving center just outside the city limits, where Jeff stared at the plane and questioned all his life choices. Perrick was already suited up in a jumpsuit made specially to accommodate his rotating midsection. Dolo looked like an inflatable emergency slide packed into nylon. The instructor, a woman named Karen, who radiated the confidence of someone who jumped out of planes more times than she'd used a microwave, eyed the trio skeptically. "You sure they're cleared for this?" she asked Jeff, pulling on gloves. "I checked with their medical officer," Jeff lied. In truth, the Veltraxian concept of medical clearance involved a brief game of darts and a chant for skeletal cohesion. By the time they were 10,000 feet in the air, Jeff had made peace with the fact that this could be how diplomatic immunity gets revoked. Perrick jumped first. He yelled something about embracing terminal velocity as an act of cultural assimilation and somersaulted out of the plane. Yippix went next, screaming in glee and flapping useless limbs like a flying piñata. Nola hesitated, then shouted, "Documenting descent velocity in 3, 2, weeby." Jeff jumped last, screaming only once and then immediately questioning why he ever befriended alien scholars in the first place. They all landed safely, miraculously, and Jeff kissed the earth. Back in Vegas by dusk, the adrenaline high was replaced by the realization that nobody had eaten since breakfast. They wandered the strip like dazed pilgrims until they found a new buffet, one themed after world cuisine. That's when things got complicated. Perrick mistook wasabi for decorative gel. Yippix tried to trade 3 spring rolls for a complimentary napkin set. Dolo filled his tray entirely with pudding and solemnly declared it nutritional paste superior to all Earth options. A waiter approached cautiously. "Do you folks need help understanding the menu?" Jeff looked up from his plate of spaghetti tacos and said, "There is no understanding this menu." Once fed, they somehow ended up at a lounge where an amateur talent night was in full swing. Dolo, perhaps still sky-high from the jump, decided to sign them up. "What are we doing?" Jeff hissed as he was dragged on stage. Perrick whispered, "Reenacting the Treaty of Zalquar 6 through interpretive dance. We're going to get banned from the planet." 15 minutes later, 4 of them stood in a spotlight. Jeff wore a plastic cape. Dolo had transformed part of his body into what looked like a trombone. Yippix narrated in 3 languages. The performance ended with Perrick lifting Jeff in the air, as if he were a diplomatic offering. They got a standing ovation. "Humans are so polite," Perrick whispered, confused. "No," Jeff said, panting. "They think it was satire. Just go with it." Afterward, a woman approached them, clapping. "That was the most avant-garde fusion of jazz and interplanetary bureaucracy I've ever seen. You should do a residency." Jeff smiled with dead eyes. "We're only here through shame. I'd buy tickets." Back at the hotel that night, Jeff collapsed onto the bed. "I swear," he mumbled, "if one of you suggests karaoke again, I will scream in binary." "We have no plans for vocal exertion tonight," Dolo said soothingly. "Good. We signed up for a galactic poker night at the Intergalactic Embassy Lounge." Jeff blinked. "That's not a real thing." "It is tonight," Perrick said, holding up a flyer printed in both English and Veltraxian glyphs. Apparently, some over-enthusiastic hotel promoter had leaned too hard into their theme week and advertised a galactic poker night. Unfortunately, someone from the actual Intergalactic Cultural Exchange Board had seen the flyer and decided to invite every non-Earth species within a 100-mile radius. Jeff spent the next hour trying to explain poker etiquette to 3 aliens who thought bluffing involved thermal disguise units and counterintelligence. Yippix blinked. "Is it legal to inject uncertainty into the minds of opponents using sonic pulses?" "Nah." Dolo held up his cards. "Can I fold these into origami birds? For deception?" "No, just play the game." They sat at a long velvet table next to a Czarn diplomat with 12 eyes, a Martian tourist in a cowboy hat, and a vaguely reptilian being with a thick Russian accent and a strong interest in Doritos. Somehow, Perrick won the first hand. "Your bluff was irrational," the Czarn said, frowning. I believed in my cards, Parikh replied sagely, despite having no idea what a flush was. An hour later, Dolo had lost 6 hands, won 2, and constructed a small monument to statistical improbability out of discarded cards and casino napkins. Jeff was breaking even, which he considered a miracle. Yipix had bartered 3 victories and was now being followed by the Martian tourist who insisted on calling him the professor. By midnight, the table disbanded. Parikh clutched a small plastic trophy that read, "Most Enthusiastic Player." Dolo had a spreadsheet of probabilities tattooed temporarily across his torso. Yipix held a poker chip and stared at it with philosophical intensity. "Earth games are magnificent," Yipix murmured. "So little logic, so much consequence." Jeff nodded. "Welcome to the species." Back in their suite, they slumped on beanbags. "So," Jeff asked, "are you closer to understanding what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas means?" Parikh blinked slowly. "No. But we know why humans need it," Dolo added. "It is the only phrase that can contain the chaos." Yipix lifted a toast with a bottle of cherry soda. "To chaos." They clinked bottles. Sunday morning rolled in like a hangover wrapped in sunshine. Jeff sat at the hotel window nursing a cup of weak coffee and watching the strip yawn into life below. The city was quieter now. The music had dulled, the sidewalks were less sticky, and the air held a sense of weary triumph, as if Las Vegas itself was relieved it had survived another weekend. Behind him, Dolo lay in a meditative pose on the floor, softly humming Veltraxian recovery chants. Yipix was tangled in the curtains, having mistaken them for a hammock sometime around 3 a.m. Parikh stood under the air conditioner, holding a pineapple and staring at it as if it held answers. Jeff turned. "Where did you get that?" "It was offered in trade for my lucky jumpsuit," Parikh said with quiet pride. "I think I won." Jeff didn't ask follow-up questions. They had until 5 p.m. before the return shuttle took the aliens back to their orbital campus. Jeff had offered them one last sightseeing stop, but nobody had the energy for Red Rock Canyon or any more novelty fountains. Instead, they ended up in a quiet corner of a park behind the Strip, far from neon and clamor. Just grass, warm sun, and a handful of confused pigeons that kept mistaking Yipix's head ornament for bread. Parikh sat down cross-legged. This was overwhelming. Jeff nodded. "Yeah, that's the idea." "Your species celebrates self-imposed chaos with currency and song," Dolo added, still sounding slightly awestruck. "It's not about logic. It's about forgetting the rest of the galaxy for a while." "Did we pass the test?" Yipix asked. Jeff looked confused. "What test?" "To understand." The phrase. "We have meditated, gambled, performed on stage, and fallen from the sky. We have danced, deceived, feasted, and sung. What more is there?" Jeff chuckled. "No one really passes that test, not even humans. Vegas is the reset button no one wants to admit they press." Dolo blinked. "That sounds like emotional denial, beneath the thick layers of ice." They sat in silence for a while until Parikh reached into his pouch and pulled out the plastic trophy from poker night. "This will be our record, a symbol of the journey." Jeff looked at it, slightly chipped, clearly mass-produced and completely ridiculous. "That's about right." Eventually they made their way back to the hotel, where their bags were packed with souvenirs, sticky mints, one confiscated pool noodle, which Yipix had named Charles, and far too many receipts with mysterious items listed under miscellaneous ambiance. At the spaceport, Jeff helped them through customs. The officer didn't blink at the pineapple or the glitter. Vegas had prepared her well. While waiting for their boarding call, Parikh turned to Jeff. "You have been adequate." Jeff raised an eyebrow. "I'll take that as the highest Veltraxian compliment." They believed it is. Dolo wanted to say competent, but I felt that lacked spiritual nuance. Yipix held up a small gift bag. "We acquired a token of appreciation." Jeff opened it. Inside was a t-shirt that read, "I survived Vegas with 3 aliens, and all I got was existential dread." He burst out laughing. You guys are the worst. Thanks. A chime echoed through the terminal. Final boarding call. Dullo stood. We will report our findings to the Interstellar Exchange Authority. With a recommendation. Earth is emotionally inconsistent, but immensely educational. Jeff smiled. I'll put that on a bumper sticker. Perrick extended one thick arm for a hug. Until the next festival of confusion. Yipix attempted a handshake, a bow, and a high five simultaneously. Jeff chose the high five. And then they were gone, boarding the small shuttle that would ferry them skyward and out of Jeff's gravitational jurisdiction. Jeff watched the shuttle rise into the pale desert sky, growing smaller until it vanished against the clouds. He took a deep breath, then turned toward the exit. As he passed a row of slot machines near the baggage claim, one flashed and chimed randomly. He stared at it. The temptation was real. Instead, he dropped the souvenir T-shirt over one arm, adjusted his baseball cap, and walked past with a half smile. He'd had enough Vegas for 1 decade. But part of him already knew, next time the aliens came back, they'd bring friends. And probably more galactic credits. And maybe, just maybe, another inflatable flamingo.